So thanks everyone for joining tonight. This presentation is titled Sparking New Life in Exhausted Achievers. My name is Stephen Donaco, and I am building, and I have what I call a courage building practice. And what that really means is that I help people connect with their inner strengths, their inner courage, and the power of their love to take those attributes into their self-development, into their relationships, into their vocational life, that is their work, and out into the world in general to help make the world a better place. And I want more people in the world who move beyond the exhausted achiever to become what I call courageously conscious achievers, so that we're all working collaboratively to really make all of those domains in our lives better. So that's my reason, or one of my reasons for doing this work. So I appreciate your interest, and I'm glad to have you here. All right. So what we're going to cover tonight include the following. I'm going to talk about, of course, the phenomenon of an exhausted achiever. I'm going to share a bit of my story traveling this road, and in the course of that, you'll get some more background on me. I'm going to talk about why the old solutions to solving the energy problem no longer work. So in other words, whenever as an achieving person, we're looking for energy, there are some typical things that we have pursued in the past that would renew us. And if those things are no longer working for you, I'll explain why that is. I'll then get into a concept of what I call your original talent, and how that might either provide clues to transcending being an exhausted achiever, or can provide you with attributes to help you find greater purpose in your work and in your life. I then talk about the principle of life and how the divine design of life actually supports us, not only supports us in nature or supports nature, it also supports us as human beings. And then I will get into the power of story as it relates to personal transformation. And then I will end with how to take this work and what you learn here tonight to the next level. What is the exhausted achiever? So first, I would say that you're a self-made professional who's enjoyed great success in the school of life. You're headstrong, and you typically forge the way that others follow. So you're a very strong leader. You have great responsibility, and it seems like more gets piled on all the time. So your reward for being able to get a lot of things done and doing really good work is that you get rewarded by having more responsibility. So at some point that might have felt rewarding, and perhaps now it just feels like more work. So you've noticed that with time, your energy and vigor is reduced, but you would never admit to it. You want to keep up the appearance of going strong, like nothing has changed. So let me share a little bit about my story in this realm and in my professional career. And you'll see the picture of me, the headshot from maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And obviously I've taken on a little bit of a different look now. But my story as a exhausted achiever in my career started with actually being very energized by my work, as it is with, I believe, all of us. I worked initially in the communications business. And what I mean by that is in like the media. So I had started working very early on, actually while I was in high school, and I was a reporter for my hometown newspaper. And then when I went to college, I studied communications and then worked for a while in commercial radio. And then my first job out of school was working in corporate communications for IBM. And as I moved through my early part of my career, I would gravitate towards roles that involved a lot of responsibility, team building, leadership positions, being very innovative. And I really liked that, and it charged me up. And my initial motivation when I got into the full-time working world in corporate America was to climb the ladder. So that was the definition of success for me. Now, over time, as I got more into like the middle and later part of my corporate career, you know, being in service to the company meant less in service to myself. So, you know, early on it was like I'm serving myself and the entity kind of simultaneously, and I felt like I was growing with the organization that I was with. But then as time went on, it felt more and more like, oh, well, I'm really serving this entity and putting that above myself. So that's just a little bit of the beginning of my story, and more of that to come. Just take a quick poll, and you can, if you have a piece of paper and a pencil handy, you could jot these down, or you could just make a mental note of this. And like, I'd ask you to consider the following attributes, right? So these are the attributes that I defined a couple slides ago. So, you know, you're professional, are you headstrong, a leader, responsible, but you have less energy and you keep up appearances. So then on the right-hand side of the slide, you know, I'd ask you to take a personal inventory, and that inventory includes, do you fit, you know, one of these attributes or one of these criteria? Do you fit more than one of them? Do you fit all of them? And or are there others I didn't mention which would seem appropriate to add? Okay. So to dive a little bit more deeply into the feeling aspect of this. So as somebody who might resonate with the definition of an exhausted achiever, is this how you're feeling? You know, one, are you tired and anxious? And this is about like, you feel like you need more energy to get everything on your plate done. Secondly, are you non-motivated? And this is not quite unmotivated. The way that I would define non-motivated is that it's more about not having the same enthusiasm for the work that you do. I mean, so you have a yearning to want to be motivated. You want to be productive, and you want to feel like you want to do more. So it's not being unmotivated, which might simply be just checking out. But non-motivated is just that your enthusiasm has gone down, and the love affair with your work is over. You know, the excitement has worn off, but you still are eager to want to get that back. And then do you feel empty? So the work now sucks your energy, when in the past it was the source of it. And then burdened. This goes back to that responsibility getting piled on, and there's really no end in sight. So again, your reward for being really productive and for having a good work ethic is that you just get more and more work to do, and it just keeps getting piled on. So then, again, you can take either some actual notes or mental notes of these attributes. And I'd ask you again to consider what I just covered there. Do you feel tired, anxious, non-motivated, empty, or burdened? And again, do one of these items resonate with you? Does more than one? Do all of them? And or are there others that I didn't mention which would seem appropriate to add? All right. So now I'm going to lead you through a brief breathing exercise. And the analogy I want to draw for this is imagine that you are having to drive through a residential neighborhood, but you're in a hurry to get to the other side of town. And like at every intersection you come to, there's a stop sign. So you start driving through this neighborhood and you're in a hurry. So you hit the gas pretty hard, and then you get to the first intersection and you like to have to really stop hard, hit the brakes hard to stop, and then immediately step on the gas again, and you race to the next stop sign and then brake hard, and then you race to the next stop sign and then you brake hard. So that's the analogy for this breathing exercise. And then the way I will lead you through this, let me just go back to the video for a moment. I just follow it in an up and down arrow. So for instance, you're going to inhale and then immediately exhale, and then inhale and exhale. So the way that it would be like, so go ahead and do maybe 8 or 10 of those kind of breaths. And I'll give you a moment just to get a sense of what that feels like. And if I asked you to keep that breathing up all day in that kind of rhythm, I suspect you wouldn't be able to do it. It's not only rushed, if you did it too long, you might hyperventilate. It's actually an effort to breathe like that. And it's very much an analogy of how we get exhausted at work, because it's very much stop, go, but there's really no opportunity to kind of pause and unwind or decompress. And then, so make note of that. And then we're going to do another breathing exercise in a little bit to illustrate something different. All right. So this next section is about restlessness. So it's essentially like when your soul has had enough. And I'll start this section with a discussion of shoulds and musts. So in psychology, there's a concept known as introjection. So you may have heard of projection, but there's another concept referred to as introjection. And really all introjection is internalizing the things that we hear from the outside about, you should do this or you must do that. And these things happen kind of all through life for all of us. And the earliest example would be in our families. So it could be as simple as like your parents telling you that you must not fight with your siblings, or you must not cross the street without an adult, and we internalize those as values, right? And as perhaps rules that our parents have. And in my family, like, going to college was something that I was told I must do. These things also happen in advertising. So, for instance, the fancy sports car gets marketed to men who are well off enough to be able to afford it. But it's also telling them you should buy this car because it'll make you feel more virile, maybe sexier, make you feel younger, right? And then on the other end of the spectrum, for women, high fashion would be something that you must buy this dress because you're going to look hotter, and you're going to look more confident, and you're going to be more attractive, right? So advertising certainly is a vehicle for introjection. It happens in culture, and particularly in business culture. So I had mentioned earlier that in my own experience, I had this expectation that I should climb the corporate ladder, or that I must climb the corporate ladder. And I don't remember anybody ever actually saying that to me, telling me those words, but it was the culture of the corporate world that I was in that basically made that a given, that I must climb the corporate ladder. And then perhaps most insidious of these is the inner critic. So often, we're our own worst critics, and the inner critic is something that a part of us that tells us, a perfectionist. Like that's a good example. Like the perfectionist within us might say, well, you're not doing that good enough. You should do that better. But the problem is, at some point, our souls no longer agree. Like we just say, well, why should I do that? Why must I do that? We start to resist those introjections. And there was a famous anthropologist who named Erik Erikson, who had done a lot of research about different cultures around the world, and he basically was researching what they had in common. And he identified 8 different stages. He called eight stages of man. And sort of in the midlife stage, there was this concept he had of generativity. And it wasn't so much about having children, because that would have happened in an earlier stage of life. But by midlife, generativity simply meant that the person, and would be true in many cultures, that the person would be interested in bringing up the next generation, like bringing his or her wisdom and teaching it to others to bring up the next generation of people in the culture or in the society. And when that generativity is able to be expressed, it's a healthy expression of self. And Erickson basically said that if we're not able to successfully express that generativity, the opposite will happen, and we'll feel stagnant. So, I hold that exhausted achievers are paradoxically busy and stagnant. So, we're doing, but it doesn't feel generative. Like we start to wonder, like, how does this actually help the next generation or help the world? So there's like a feeling of stagnation that happens, and then our souls say, there must be more to life. And then why is the next big thing not the solution? So, throughout our careers and in the work we do, particularly for achievers, the next big thing often is the thing that turns us on, right? It's the thing that re-energizes us. So a lot of times, the next big project, right? Somebody says, well, I've got this project that's going to give you high visibility in the organization, and you can lead it, right? So that would be a challenge that, for me in my career, it'd be great. Like, let me have at it, and it re-energize me. Or perhaps the next big job, or the next big promotion, the next big raise. So the next big thing would typically be the thing that energizes us, but it was about more stimulation. More stimulation is the motivator. But at some point, when we feel like the next big thing is no longer the solution, things are shifting in our souls. And if we're not aware of it, like, we can be unkind with ourselves. So this is the inner critic coming up again. And self-judgment might increase, and we might ask, well, what's wrong with me? Inner critic is at work there. What's wrong with me? Or just snap out of it might be another reaction to wondering why the next big thing doesn't have the energy anymore. So then next section here is signals of change. And these are really the subtle nudges that our soul gives us in order to move towards something more meaningful in life. All right, so in our achieving life, when it felt normal, or when it feels normal, we can have a pretty healthy sense of taking care of ourselves, and we work hard so that we can play hard. And the typical antidotes to working hard would be pastimes, like, TV or movies or gaming, whether that's indoor or outdoor sports, or even video games, or we might have hobbies and we go out and socialize. And then we also will find comforts. So, food, drink, going on vacation, all of these things enrich us when we're feeling pretty fulfilled in life. So achievers balance out all of the hard work they do with, like, all of these really playful things that feel good. So those, what I call typical antidotes, lose their potency when pastimes instead become distractions and comforts become numbing agents. So if we enjoyed like television shows or movies at one point, but now we plop in front of the TV and just kind of mindlessly watch it and not really paying attention to it as a way to zone out, or if socializing turns into like gossip and we find ourselves complaining about people a lot, that could be a signal of change, that there's something going on inside of us that we're looking for something more fulfilling. And then same thing with comforts. So rather than food becoming something enjoyable and something that we eat to sustain us, it then becomes something we binge on, and in a way to actually push emotions down. And also with drink, like it's particularly alcohol, right? So alcohol becomes something to anesthetize ourselves, so we're not having to feel the afflictive feelings that we have about our lives. And then in the realm of vacation, that could be when we go on vacation and we plan a lot of things to do, and we think that's sort of going to solve the problem of not feeling fulfilled at work. But then we come back and and the first thing we think about is, well, I need a vacation from my vacation. And then can we become aware of the stress that's happening? So, regard your thoughts as energy. The catch of being human is that we have this very unique ability to think ourselves into stress. And animals don't have this issue. So, a rabbit in the wild doesn't ponder if it's going to be chased by like a coyote tomorrow, right? I mean, for animals in the wild, they react to stress in the moment. Now, the unique thing about being human is that we can think about a stress and invent it in our minds. And we might think about something that's going to happen tomorrow, or a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now. And we can actually experience the same physiological stress thinking about an event that has not happened as much as we would feel the stress of that same thing actually happening to us in the moment. So it's a unique ability that's limited to humans. So the classic idea here is that you may have heard that if we ruminate too much on the past, it might cause depression, and if we focus too much and worry about the future, that can cause anxiety. Another signal of change then is what I call straddling worlds. And there's this author, Harrison Owen, who came up with this thing called the law of 2 feet on the right-hand side of the screen there. And he says if people find themselves in situations where they are neither learning anything nor contributing, they are responsible for moving to another place, using their 2 feet to find a place where their participation is more meaningful. And I sort of will take a little bit of a twist on that, that the law of 2 feet is that each of your feet may be in a world or realm that has meaning and no meaning respectively. So the call to make a purposeful change in your life it may occur when you find yourself straddling worlds. So for me, it was I had 1 foot planted in the corporate world, and then like midway through my career, I started to get involved more in helping work. And originally that happened through the lay ministry. And then I had done a 6-month hospital chaplain internship. And then I actually went back to school for a master's degree in pastoral counseling and was counseling people. And I was doing my corporate job this whole time. So I had 1 foot firmly planted in the corporate world and the other foot firmly planted in this helping world. And what was happening for me was that my feet were starting to spread apart because the worlds were moving apart. So if you have 1 foot in these 2 different worlds and the worlds start to move apart, at some point you're not going to be able to do the splits. And you must make the choice to move one of those feet. And the question is, which realm do you choose? And then in this section, I'm going to embark on a discussion of nature and intuition. So the nature of life on Earth is also the nature of human beings. All right, so I'm going to lead you through a second breath awareness exercise here. And let me just go back into the full video. And what I'd like you to do is just take a moment and simply become aware of just your natural breath. So nothing special to do. Just simply sit for a moment and take 3 or 4 breaths and just pay attention to them. And notice the process of your breathing. And then let me lead you visually through that. So we're going to do it like a triangle. So you're going to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So what's happening here? Why is it a triangle all of a sudden? What's happening here, what you might notice that there's this natural pause that happens at the end of the exhale and before the next inhale. So we breathe in, out, and then there's a pause, and nothing happens in the pause. It's a rest before the next inhale. So I invite you to consider that as a metaphor for how we're designed to both to do things and also just to simply be, right? There's no obligation and there's nothing to do in the pause between the breaths. It's a rest. And it's a metaphor for really how we're divinely designed to be living abundantly and naturally on the planet. So life isn't completely about the doing, right? Which was this. There's doing, but then there's a rest before we do again. So this is an exercise that simple meditation that you can do, where you take that into your life and just simply meditate on the pause. Like, oh, I don't have to do anything during this pause. I can simply be, and I can be okay with that. And then can you take that as a metaphor for going out into the world and giving yourself the chance to rest and the opportunity and the permission? Okay. So next then I'd like to talk about the principle of life. So essentially here, analogies in nature and in mythology, affirm how the process of change and renewal entails the breaking down of the old in order to allow for the emergence of the new. And the first principle we'll talk about as it relates to this is what's called negative entropy. So essentially all that is, it's the way that life on Earth is designed to regenerate. So living organisms, as opposed to inanimate objects, are always regenerating. So if you think of the forest as an ecosystem, trees grow, and then at various points trees die and they tumble down and then they decay. And the decay serves the purpose to feed the new growth. And the forests will continue to thrive in this manner. Our bodies are the same way. Tissues are rebuilding. You may have heard that like every so many years, all of the cells in our body regenerate. It's this same concept, and it's the same process that's happening out in nature and in our bodies, right? And then in mythology, you've probably heard about the phoenix rising from the ashes. So that's a metaphor for this. That the phoenix is a bird that at the end of its life it self-immolates, and then it burns up, and then from the ashes of itself it actually rebirths and it lives again. And then psychologically we can apply this to our thoughts, and we can reframe our thinking to be more life affirmative and more positive. And when we do that, typically we're more productive and we're gentler with ourselves, and we give ourselves permission to be just as much as we do. Okay, so next I talk about what I call your original talent. And it's the thing that always came naturally to you and that you inherently found joy doing. And for me, my original talent was being a communicator. Like, so when I was, even before I was in kindergarten, I was kind of enamored with weathermen. Like I felt like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a weatherman. And what I would do is I would cut out the weather map from the newspaper, pin it on my bulletin board, and then I would do the weather in front of like just an imaginary audience. And I liked presenting things. And then eventually, that led to my doing writing and speaking. And those things, it's not that I didn't practice them, but became natural for me, and I just loved doing them. Think of a child who can sit down with an instrument and like pick it up and then start fiddling with it, and then all of a sudden they're playing a tune. And again, it's not to say that they automatically are a genius at it, because it takes practice to become proficient. But not everybody can do that. Like, not every kid is going to sit down at the piano and naturally be able to play it by ear, but some will. So think about what your original talent is. Go back to like your childhood and just ponder for a moment, like, what was it that you really loved doing and it always came naturally to you? So for some people, it could be numbers. Like, some people are really good at just the natural mathematicians. Other people are good at guidance, just helping others through compassion. Some people are good at fixing things. They're very mechanical. They're good with their hands or building things. And then other people are good at expression. So people who can pick up a pen and draw and like do some really beautiful artwork, but it comes naturally to them. So the point here is that everybody is gifted. And I always had this problem in school that there were these gifted programs for kids, because it instantly marginalized those who were deemed not gifted. And I really thought from a very early age that we're all gifted, and all of us should be nurtured in that. And we're really doing a disservice to our fellow beings when we deem some people as being gifted and we support them, and others as not having that. And they don't get supported, or they don't get supported in the same way. But can we really shift our collective thinking to the truth that everybody is gifted? And this all leads, like, if you meditate on what your original talent is or your inherent strengths, this can get you in touch with the emergence, or it can enable the emergence of your essential self. So your essential self and your gift naturally want to emerge. I mean, think of them as seeds that are wanting to break through the earth and blossom. At the soul level, our souls know that we were put on earth for a purpose. And the evolution of ourself must align with that purpose. So again, with respect to those of us who are used to being achievers, it's altogether fine and good that we have gone through stages where we felt fulfilled in the work we were doing. Like, I value my experience in corporate America. I certainly don't put it down. And at that time of my life, it was in alignment, I believe, with my purpose, because I was learning. But at some point, continuing to do the same old thing no longer aligned with my purpose. So for me, the self-evolution was identifying that I wanted to use my talents to help others and serve others, and not the entity of the company. So, and you're the only one who can choose to express your purpose, to give your gift. But always your essential self, particularly if you're paying attention. And I'm going to assume, because you're interested in this presentation tonight, that your essential self is interested in emerging, and it wants to emerge. And you can optimize your emergence by tuning your instrument. And what I mean by that is tuning the instrument of your body. So think of the body like a guitar, and each system, each physiological system, plus your mind, are strings on the guitar. So you don't have to be a musician to know if an instrument's out of tune. So if somebody strummed a guitar and one of the strings was not in tune, it's like we would just know, like it just doesn't sound right. And it's the same thing with our body. We can feel when something is off if we're paying attention. So when the body is in tune, the various parts, the various mental and physiological systems in our bodies are in harmony. And the result is that we perform better. So for example, our digestion is optimized when the body is at ease. And you might notice, I think for all of us who are achiever types, like if we eat on the go, or if we try to eat while we're multitasking other things, like our digestion just might be off sometimes. And it's because like all of our energy is being directed towards the doing, and digestion has to be optimized, or it's optimized when our body is more in a resting state. So I want to lead you through a quick technique that is based on the research of a entity called the Institute of HeartMath. And this is what I would call a tuning tool, right? Or a tuning technique. HeartMath calls it the neutral tool. And it's called the neutral tool because it's about neutralizing any afflictive or negative emotions that come up. And it helps you to get into a more tuned, or what they call coherent state. So just this is very simple, and you can do this in 30 seconds to a minute. So what I would invite you to do is, again, become aware of your breathing and not forcing anything. And then make note of any feelings that you're feeling right now, particularly if you're having any kind of worried or anxious feelings. Paying attention to your breathing. And then what you're going to do is direct your attention to the center of your chest, your heart space, and pretend and visualize that it is your heart that is doing the breathing. In other words, that the air is coming in through the middle of your chest on the inhale, and the air is exiting through your chest on the exhale. So it's almost like your heart is the organ doing the breathing. So it's heart focus and then heart breathing. And the way that it works is that you continue to do that until any afflictive or negative thoughts have been neutralized. And that process of redirecting your thoughts to your heart space gives your mind something to do other than ruminate on what's going on in your emotional world. So it's redirecting your attention. And I would say that it's not denying your emotions, but it gives you a chance to kind of reset and self-soothe in the moment. And this is actually a really good thing to practice if you're feeling like heated and you're feeling like you want to fight with somebody or argue with somebody. This is good to kind of bring you into a more a thoughtful state of being, where you might have a better solution for solving a particular problem, particularly in relationships. All right, so the next section here is the quest for better. And this is about living the next chapter of your life. And I'm going to go through here something called the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a framework, a story framework that was identified, I wouldn't say developed, but identified by a mythologist, an author, and speaker by the name of Joseph Campbell. You may have heard of him. And Joseph Campbell was a voracious reader. He actually spent years reading, and he would read all of these myths from history. And what he had concluded was that many of these myths, particularly when they involved a hero or a sage, they fell into this framework which he identified as the hero's journey. And the hero's journey involved the known world and then the person going into the unknown world. And you could see in this graphic that the known world is just a fraction of the size of the unknown. But in order for transformation to occur, we must delve deeply into the unknown. And we learn things about ourselves and the world that we wouldn't get by staying in the known world. So what happens in the hero's journey is that there's a call to adventure. And I would say that your interest in this topic, and if you feel like an exhausted achiever, that might be your call to adventure. Pay attention to the feeling, and maybe the feeling is giving you information about what your soul wants to do. So that's the call to adventure. And then what happens next is that there's supernatural aid, feeling in alignment with something greater than yourself to compel you to get beyond your current situation. And then when you decide you want to continue to move forward and you feel like you have this supernatural aid of your inner courage or strength, you then will approach the threshold between the known and the unknown world. And then what typically happens is that there's a threshold guardian. And that guardian could take the form of fears, doubts, reservations about going forward. Like, these are the things that will challenge us. These are the things that want to keep us in the known world. And we need to make a decision. Like, do we want to go forward into the unknown? So if we decide to do that, if we decide to cross the threshold, we get to the beginning of our transformation, and the universe answers that. And actually what we find is it provides us with mentors and helpers. And again, I would say, as it relates to your interest in this topic tonight, if you're embarking on a hero's journey right now, I'm going to say I'm showing up as one of your helpers to give you some guidance tonight. And there very likely will be others that will help you as well. Part of then going further into the unknown is that challenges and temptations come up. And these can be difficult to resist. So I would say, in my own career, I was tempted by the prospect of another job. So I'd gotten offered, a job at some point that was, better money. It was a really nice title. And I went ahead and I took it. So it's sort of, at that point in my life, took me off of what could have been a hero's journey, but perhaps I wasn't ready for it yet. Right. So, it's, again, we don't judge ourselves about the challenges and temptations, but if they appear and we're conscious of it and we still think, well, that temptation is really only going to be a short-term fix, then we continue to go deeper into the unknown, and we still will encounter other helpers until we finally have a revelation. And this revelation takes us into the abyss. This could be a very dark time or confusing time in life. And I go back to the metaphor of the phoenix, right? So this is where the old has to die in order for the new to be reborn. So our old self goes into the abyss and experiences a death of sorts, but that death is not about finality. It's about being transformed. Like, we emerge as a new self, or as a more whole self, and we get a lesson. And for me, this revelation occurred when I realized it was not sustainable for me to straddle worlds anymore. It was time for me to make a change that was one or the other. And then we start then from our transformation to start emerging back up into the known world. And then there's this milestone called atonement. And the way that you might break down this word is at one-ment. And this is to be at one with a power that's greater than yourself. This is really, think of it as like you're not only being helped by a power greater than yourself, but that you're actually going to operate as that power going forward back into the known world. And then we get into the return. We step back from the threshold, from the unknown, taking all the lessons that we've learned on the hero's journey, and then bringing them back into the unknown world. And then there's this thing called the gift of the goddess. And really what that is it's an integration. It's an integration of the unknown parts of ourselves that were formerly, that we may have resisted before. And particularly in the West, everything is very kind of masculine oriented. We're very focused, very kind of get it done type of society. To some extent, like, violence is almost exalted, right? And those are all very masculine qualities, but the gift of the goddess is to bring the more nurturing, the more contemplative and the more spiritual aspects into our life. And it's not about denying the masculine sides of oneself, but it's also about integrating the feminine side. And this isn't referring to gender. This is referring to just the parts of ourselves. So then we take all of that, return back into the known world, and then we do our purposeful work. And this call to adventure can happen again and again. It can happen many times throughout our lives. And each time that we go through it, the wisdom that we bring back is priceless. Like money can't buy it, and nobody could ever take it away from you. So then that leads me into the power of story. So neurologically, our brains make sense of and they integrate our experiences through story. So if you were to go through the hero's journey, whatever it is that you learned would actually become much more foundational if you told the story of it, right? So my telling the story of my own journey in my career, and now how I've transformed and decided that I needed to have 2 feet firmly planted in the helping realm. That the more I tell that story, the more foundational it becomes in my life, and the more self-assured then we become in our stories, the more that we can tell them, and our brains neurologically integrate that, and they make sense of that experience, particularly if it's a challenging experience. There's been research done that people who go through traumatic experience are able to process and to heal from those experiences much more effectively when they're able to tell the stories of them. Now, the caveat here is that this holds true for our victim stories too. So you can have the same exact story happen in your life, and you could tell it from 2 different perspectives. You can tell it from the perspective of having triumphed through the challenge, or you can tell it from the perspective of being victimized through the challenge. And certainly we could feel both of those things, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, pay attention to what lens you tell the story through. So if you're always telling your story through the victim lens, that's going to become foundational. And then you're going forward, you will feel more and more like a victim as you go through other challenges. So if you can tell your story more and more through the triumphant lens, you will feel much more powerful and much more effective and much stronger as you go through your life. So we'll do a quick wrap up here. I talked about the phenomenon of the exhausted achiever. I discussed why the old solution to solve the energy problem no longer works. Went through the idea, the concept of your original talent and how it relates to your purpose, or how it can inform your purpose. I then went into the design of life, the hero's journey, and the power of story. And then I taught you some tools to enrich your self-awareness and self-soothing. So I gave you a couple of breathing exercises. I taught you the HeartMath neutral tool. And then I would invite you kind of as homework to follow up on all this is to tell the story of triumph in your life. So, just think of a challenging time you had. And even if it's painful, go back and then think about what were your inner strengths that helped you to triumph. Because the fact that you're here tonight and listening to this means that you not only survived, but somehow you thrived through that experience. So if you can go back and tell the story of it and write it down, that triumph will become foundational for you going forward. So we then, from self-awareness to practice, it's not enough to know the dynamics that are at work here that compel you to change. Because I've presented a lot of things to you here tonight, and you can sort of academically know all this now. But in order for it to really stick, that you must implement the practice of it. So it supports your continued growth and awareness. So it's one thing to be motivated by the presentation today, but it's another thing altogether to be inspired to take the lessons you've learned into action. And again, one of those ways you can do that is through telling your story from a triumphant point of view. So then I would invite you into the next level of this work. So if you'd like to explore this more deeply, I would invite you to attend a 3-session online workshop that I'll be holding called The Key to Courage. And this workshop will be mystical, it'll be scientific, and it will be experiential. So it'll appeal to both your left brain and your right brain. if you choose to want to go to the next level, like, I honor your courage, and I'm humbled to be your guide, and I'm really would look forward to helping you on your journey, on your hero's journey. And if you don't feel led to do that right now, I'm also honor you for your interest tonight, and I trust that your soul knows the path that you're on is the right one. So in the meantime, I invite you to contact me. My email is steven@donaco.com. I'm on, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn as well. I'm curious about how your journey goes, whether you choose to work with me or not. Feel free to contact me. I just love to hear how things go for you, because again, I have an interest in you becoming a courageously conscious achiever, and I want like more of us in the world, so that we're benefiting everybody. So thanks for your attention tonight. I certainly appreciate it. So long.